Welcome to the MacMillan Report. I'm Marilyn Wilkes, your host, and our guest is Ashok Acharya, an associate professor in the Department of Political Science and joint director of Developing Countries Research Center at the University of Delhi. At Yale, Professor Acharya is the Henry Hart Rice Foundation Fellow at the MacMillan Center. He is author of the forthcoming volume, Equality, Difference, and Group Rights, The Case of India. Professor Acharya's research interests encompass contemporary and comparative political theory, affirmative action, and ethics and public policy. Today we'll talk with him about his project called Know Your Rights India. Welcome, Professor Acharya.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege.
So you are a professor at the University of Delhi in India. Why are you here at Yale as the Rice Fellow?
Well, I was invited, and I thought I must just take up this opportunity to be especially at Yale and spend a year. The invitation was pretty exciting because it allowed me to work with the MacMillan Center, and especially with the Global Justice Program, which is where much of my current research revolves around.
Okay, so let's talk about your current project, Know Your Rights India. Give us an overview of it.
Know Your Rights India is a project in its infancy, but this is a project that tries to bring together on a wiki-based platform using online technologies, listing all the rights, benefits, entitlements of all the people, and especially those that relate to the needs and aspirations of the poor and marginalized people of India.
Okay.
And on one single platform, what we plan to do is not only state what all those rights are of the people and the benefits are, but also give an account of a simplified procedure of how to realize those rights. And it's not just about literacy.
Okay.
We also know that India doesn't have full literacy, that there is still a substantial proportion of the people who are illiterate.
What would that proportion be?
Oh, that would be roughly around 40% would be illiterate.
Wow.
And so that's between 35 to 40%, and that's a huge number.
Yes.
But when we speak about the rights literacy per se, this is a problem that we see happening just anywhere. Whether you are literate or you are not literate, the rights and the language in which those rights are expressed, the laws and the policies are not always accessible to common people.
Sure.
So people have to struggle, and that's why the lawyers make a field day.
Right. So what led you to create this project? What gave you the idea?
Well, the idea was essentially to I thought that we are right at a cusp in India where we are seeing a revolution of increasing recognition of people's social and economic rights. So there is a right to education, there is a right to employment, and we are soon debating, very seriously about the right to health. Whereas I also felt that most of the time and most of the people wouldn't know what these rights are unless somebody told them, look, these are your entitlements and you can claim them. And that many of the NGOs who work on these areas are too specialized. Like there are health NGOs and there are livelihood related NGOs, and they are also geographically concentrated in a few places. So we felt that if we have to build up a knowledge community and through that empower the people, the best way to do is to build up this the wiki-based platform, which will not only educate people about what the rights and entitlements are in the simplest of the language, but also bring in many of these NGOs and draw them into the network, and through them make them the interlocutors through which we can speak to the common people. So it is about a rights literacy campaign, sort of a rights education campaign, which also would need the help of the NGOs.
Right, because as you had said, there's 35 to 40% of the country is illiterate, so they wouldn't necessarily be able to read a website. So you would need that intermediary to work with people.
Absolutely,
Right.
yes.
Okay, so what are the objectives?
Well, the objectives are, as I just said, to build up a very comprehensive website, and for each of the right, lead the person through the various stages. Okay, here is your right in the most simplified language, and then if it is not realized at this level, you can take this further up through this procedure. Mm-hmm. So we guide them step by step on every little entitlement that they have, mm-hmm. and these can vary, by the way, across provinces. Okay. So different provinces would have different entitlements about how they wish to realize those mm-hmm. rights. There are a set of constitutional rights, and there are different sets of policy entitlements that different provinces would enact from time to time.
So is the website in effect today? Could one go to the website?
No, it's not yet built up. Okay. We are now mobilizing all our resources to build this up. Mm-hmm. And when it comes, it will not actually be called Know Your Rights. It would be called Jan Adhikar, which means in Hindi, Jan means people and Adhikar means rights. So people's rights. Okay. So we have registered the domain, mm-hmm. But we will have to launch it. Right now, at this point of time, we are collecting a lot of data. Mm-hmm. And especially at this stage, we are collecting data from 4 states. And India has many states, 28 states and so many union mm-hmm. territories. So we are only collecting from 4 different states, geographically north, south, east, and west. Mm-hmm. And in course of time, we turn these 4 different states into 4 different nodal zones. Okay. So the northern state of Uttarakhand, for instance, becomes the nodal zone for northern India. Right. And then the eastern state of Orissa, for instance, become the nodal zone for eastern India. And then they collect data from neighboring states. Okay. And then amass all of that. Okay.
So, and you chose Hindi because that's the most commonly spoken language?
That's roughly 40% of India's population mm-hmm. speaks Hindi, though it is the most spoken language in India, though there are other languages, and that's one of our further challenges, that at the first step we try to translate all the web content from English to Hindi, mm-hmm. and then as a second step, we translate them into all the other existing Indian languages as well.
So more people have access to
more people have access.
Right. So when do you think it will launch?
Oh, that's a very, very tough question mm-hmm. at this point of time. Yeah, we are trying our best to have this launched as far as as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. But this means that working closely with lots of institutions, educational institutions, the law faculties in the different countries, and I'm in touch with some of them to convert their legal clinics into Know Your Rights clinics, mm-hmm. as well as and I also want the content writing to be done by the students. So we have a huge number of student interns working on this. Mm-hmm. And they have just begun the work, and only on these 4 states. And we hope that by end of July or August, we would be done with the work of these 4 states, after which we could multiply and add the remainder of the states, mm-hmm. and should be able to, a conservative estimate would be at least 2 years from now. Okay. And it could be sooner. Mm-hmm. I would be but I would be surprised if it is sooner than that.
And once it is up and running, how will you measure its success?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because often enough we don't give enough importance to this particular area as to how do we measure the success. Mm-hmm. And the net behavior of any net citizen is not always very predictable. People can surf from site to site. Mm-hmm. So what we hope to be doing is we measure the success of this on the basis of 3 things. Of course, the first is very important, is impact. Has it closed the gap between the level of people's knowledge of what their formal entitlements are and how they go about realizing them? So one of the ways of measuring the success would be, after a given period of time, if the rate of benefits take up for any particular right, or some of the rights that are highlighted mm-hmm. in this website goes up, then we know we have had some success. And but that would be difficult to measure, because that would take a longer time. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, we propose to do a kind of a web analytics study on the effectiveness of the content, and use some sample surveys to measure as to whether or not this is really appeal to the people, and whether they would vote for it or whether they would suggest certain alternatives to the creation or the design of the website, and how they would, what sorts of suggestions they would give to improvise the content of it, and the traffic. So the more number of hits, of course, we know that this is a success. And
how are you planning to spread the word about the site so people know about it?
This is something we propose doing through the educational institutions on the one hand, and also mostly through the NGOs whom we are now trying to partner. So right at this point of time, what we have done is we have almost successfully mapped all the NGOs in the country.
Wow.
Almost all the NGOs in the country.
How many are there?
Oh, there would be thousands. India has,
Really?
yes, thousands
Oh
of them.
goodness.
But we have been able to map all of them, and now we are trying to, again categorize them as to how effective they are in particular regions, and what are their areas of strength. So depending on which region, which NGO works in, and what their areas of strength, we would further, like to open up an avenue through which we train even the NGOs to take up this task at our behest, because we can't be reaching out everywhere.
Sure.
Right. So we will have to bring in the NGOs, train them, and help them become the effective interlocutors. So the NGO mapping has been one of the most challenging exercises so far. But it is still something that you can do at home. You can surf the net and you can find out.
So there's no central registry of NGOs in India, for instance?
Well, there are. They get registered, and you have, you can always get information about these NGOs from the different governments of the provinces and the states. But at times they can be misleading also, because many organizations get registered and they don't do anything. Right? So they are the front organizations for someone, and so we want to find out not only those organizations that are registered, but which are actually working for the people. And that's a tougher challenge.
Sure.
So in which case we have to go through a step-by-step process. So we not only do we get the NGOs mapped, but then we get the entire information vetted by slightly bigger organizations and NGOs, which are in the business of funding some of these local NGOs, to find out from them if we are right about mapping out these NGOs as the effective ones, and whether they're really doing the work in those areas.
Seems like a huge undertaking.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So ultimately, what do you hope to achieve with the project?
Very many things. Of course, I would say two things primarily. I would say because of my work on global justice, and I have become more sensitive to and then there's also a bunch of scholars who are supporting me in this work back in India, who have become very sensitive to the needs of the poor and the marginalized. So the first big goal that I think we should be able to achieve is to have a better sense of how this website is going to enhance the livelihoods of people. And that, I think, would be a big achievement. The second big achievement, I would say, is to create a knowledge community, bring academics in closer contact with activists, and have a richer knowledge community out there, which then goes out to strengthen our democratic experience, enrich our citizen engagement at different levels, and also somewhere pressurizes the government to be more responsive to the needs of the people. And so we can, as academics, we can keep theorizing as to what makes democracy work. But this would be a different kind of a challenge to go out and see how do we actually make democracy work.
Right. Very good. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, and I wish you all the best with the project.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure.
For more information about Professor Acharya and his research, please visit our website at yale.edu/MacMillan Report. Be sure to join us again for another episode of the MacMillan Report, made possible through funding from the Whitney and Betty MacMillan Center for International and Area Studies at Yale.